Hi, it's Larry Talks again. We're about our fourth program here, and the theme is civil rights, gay civil rights, and Kim Davis. You know who Kim Davis is? Well, Kim hears God speaking to her, and she takes the Bible literally, and she also something very peculiar about America. It's quite common that we elect a person to give marriage licenses. And she was elected to do that in a southern state of Kentucky. And she decided that gay marriage was illegal. And she refused to sign marriage licenses to gay people. They put her in jail. Naturally, since the Supreme Court said gay people are not only equal human beings, they also have a right to marry. And she said, oh no, God says otherwise. Screw you. And they put her in jail. They put her in jail once. The Supreme Court of the state twice said she was wrong. They let her out of jail on the condition that she would do nothing. She has done something. She sits in her office trying to stop gay licenses. And the state is in a very precarious position. They don't know what to do because she's elected and there's no alternative. What they've said is, we want your aides to sign the documents. But this has put all the documents up to, what do you call, scrutiny as to whether they're legal or not. And so now they're threatening to throw her back in jail again. Mike Huckabee, a presidential candidate, has said, oh, I'm all for her. Now, let me explain why this is so controversial and should be worldwide. This is a repeat of the Civil War. In the Civil War, slaves were freed. What did the southern states do? They immediately enacted laws to take all the freedoms away from blacks, and they succeeded. And they succeeded for 100 years until the Civil Rights Movement, 1863, 1963, overturned those state laws. So we call this state rights. So this whole concept of the Supreme Court of the United States has said two things. Gays are equal, and that includes lesbian, bisexuals, transgendered, are equal human beings, and they have a right to marry. And that this goes back to the base, and this is what really angers me about this Kim Davis. We have two rights here. One of them is I have the first right of the Constitution. The first Bill of Rights says you can believe any goddamn stupid thing you want and say the Bible says it or whatever religious reason, and that is your right to believe it. That's okay in America. What's not okay is if you take that right and you say, I want to take away, we did it for 100 years, slavery. The Bible said slavery was all right, so we had slaves. And then, but the Constitution said, no, all human beings, all men and women are created equal. And we had a civil war over it. Now we're having a civil war over this. And the bad news is her state is trying to do exactly what the southern states did after the Civil War. That is, they freed the slaves, then each state turned around and made laws enslaving the blacks. They did things like, oh, blacks can work for food and shelter and nothing else. And just a whole series of laws called Reconstruction that basically took all their rights away. And then 100 years later, we fought the civil rights and gave back the right to vote, for example, and so many other rights, property rights. Now, this state, Kentucky, and the southern states are trying, here's their logic. Their logic is, well, God, the Bible, I take the Bible literally. We're all Christians. Nothing else really matters. And but here's the problem. She's elected, and the law says she should carry out her duties as the person who signs marriage licenses. And the Supreme Court has said gays are equal and they have a right to marry. And she says, number one, no, they're not equal and they're not human beings. They have no rights at all. Now, see, that's where the conflict is. The good news, ladies and gentlemen, is the Supreme Court of the state of Kentucky has come in 3 times and said, no, you're wrong. But they haven't. And she's still sitting in that office screwing up the marriage licenses, doing everything she can to stop them and succeeding. And you've got a presidential candidate saying, hey, I'm all for her. I'll go to jail with her. Huckabee, fundamentalist. The good news is that unlike the Civil War, the Supreme Court of a southern state is saying, no, this is not okay. We're not going to wait 100 years to give gays the rights they have, the Supreme Court has granted. And therefore, the Supreme Court of the state, what I predict will happen is that the state is, hey, this woman who's been divorced 3 or 4 times and had abortions, had, I don't know what, no, she didn't, I don't think she had abortions, but she's been divorced 2 or 3 times. The state, well, she has no money, but the people whose license, can you see the civil rights issue here? The people coming to get a license who are gay are being told, number one, they're not human beings because they don't have any rights at all. Number two, they absolutely have no right to marry. She doesn't believe that she believes that gay is a sin, you're going to hell, and you have no rights. That's what the Bible says, and she obviously doesn't want to give them the right to marry. Now, the problem is when these people go after, and this is such a violation of civil rights. 3 times her state has backed her up in doing this. 3 times. They've let her out of jail. They've put her back in her office, and she is breaking the law again, right at this very moment. And who are these people going to sue? So I can just see gay people lining up to get licenses because, oh boy, we can sue and make a lot of money on this deal. Who are they going to sue? She has no money. They could sue Huckabee. I hope they will, but most likely they'll sue the state of Kentucky, and they will win, and they'll win lots of. And if not, these lawyers will make a lot of money. I guess the only good news on this is, here's what infuriates me. We have a woman saying here, I have a right to believe whatever I have, and the Constitution backs me up. True. And over here we have the Supreme Court says, number one, gays are human beings. Oh, I don't agree with that. 2, they have a right to marry. Oh, I don't agree with that. And I have the legal right to suppress that. And I'm going to. And even if I don't have the legal right, God tells me I should suppress it. And the state's backing her up. Not willingly. So I think in lawsuits at the state that since the Supreme Court has ruled that she's wrong, but they haven't enforced it, they put her back in office. She's sitting there still denying, still screwing it up in the sense that no one knows what these marriage licenses are worth in terms of public thing. There's one other remark I have to make. It's extremely important about, I taught world religions for 33 years. Something most people don't understand about American law and another reason why we're in this mess. Marriage in the United States is a civil contract. It is not a sacrament. Now, the religions say it is, but again, remember, we have the very thing that she is saying, the First Amendment, which separates church and state and allows her to believe whatever we want to believe, also says there shall be no establishment of religion. Now, in effect, America did that when they said, here's the deal. I don't know whether it's federal, but every state has a law that says judges can marry people. I can marry people. I belong to Universal Life Church, which was founded for the purpose of marrying people without a religion, because it's a civil contract. Now, every state has allowed a minister, a priest or minister or a rabbi or anybody religious to be the chief witness. They have interpreted that as they're in charge of marriage, which they are not. Now, what you need to remember is that marriage is only a civil contract. It's not a sacrament. They think it's a sacrament and they're in charge of it, and the state has no right to do what they're doing. Well, they're just wrong about that. The law is the law, and the First Amendment of the Constitution says that actually, and we'd be much better in this country if we called marriage a civil union, because that's what it is. It's a legal union. It's not a sacrament. And then they get all of, oh, they're going to force us to marry gay people, bull, all that bull. No, because marriage is a civil contract. That's all it's ever been. The only way religion gets to participate is a minister may be the chief witness. The state says it's the two people who marry, and you must have two witnesses, and a minister can be a witness. And with that law, the church claims complete control over marriage. That's what's wrong with this whole argument. It should never have taken place in America. Other countries have done the right thing from the beginning and said there is no marriage. Marriage is a civil contract. That's all it is. There's nothing else. And so that's part of the fight here. In conclusion, we are fighting the Civil War again. That's the bad news. And the southern states are trying to reinstate once see, they're saying states' rights, and that the state has a right. And I've heard congressmen argue, well, the Supreme Court should never have done this because they're not the majority of the people. The states should decide about gay marriage. Oh, give me a break. Every poll in the United States for the last 5 years has said the majority of people want gay people. Again, it's a civil union. Shouldn't as equal citizens they have a right to do whatever they want? Has nothing to do with church. Has nothing to do with God. Has nothing to do with religion. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And until we hear that, we're not even going to begin this argument. But this argument is going to go on for a long time because of these two factors: states' rights and this horrible idea, stupid idea that Americans have that marriage belongs to the church. It does not belong to the church. Marriage is a civil union made by the law and allows the church to marry people if they choose. That will never change, and therefore no one is going to force anybody to marry gay people. That can't happen because it's an option that a minister always had. I mean, that's the law. And I've never heard anything different. So that's a nonsense argument. But the real argument here that I think we all need to think about in whatever country you are is what is marriage? Marriage is a civil union that it does not belong to the church. If the church wants to make it a sacrament, it's an option. I love in Mexico where there is no, you can't get married in a church. There's no way. What you do is you get married in public at the courthouse, and then you go to the church and you get a separate document because the state won't it won't recognize a priest as a minister, as a witness. Cool. That's what we should have done from the beginning. If we had done that, we would never be in this mess now, and we would never call it gay marriage. We'd be calling it all a civil union, which is what in law it is. So where is reason in all this? And I think it's ironic. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say this is a civil war all over again. The bad news being they're trying to do exactly what they did during the Civil War, which is states making laws to try to overturn the Constitution of the United States. They successfully did it after the Civil War. They will not successfully, thank God, do it now. And I have to give the state of Kentucky credit for the Supreme Court acting immediately and trying to do the right thing. But they're in a quandary. They don't know what the status of these marriage licenses are now. They don't know the legal status, and only the court. So even though the Supreme Court of Kentucky has ruled 3 times that she's wrong, there will still have to be a ruling in the courts about the status of these licenses. That will go on for years. because it's a no man's land. And this is the new Civil War. That's it, folks. Don't you think that's enough crap for one day? Let's see. If you have comments, questions, or have suggestions on what we should be talking about, email me at mormanl, MOORMANL at AOL.com. This is your Uncle Larry signing off. Happy legal agreements.